everyone, this is Dr. Lafora, and I wanted to talk to you today about moving at God's pace. The interesting thing about God's pace is that it's not always the same as ours, and it probably usually is not, to be quite honest. The best that most of us can do is hope that our time is close to God's, at least as close as possible. We want to get that alignment as closely as possible as to when He wants things to happen in comparison to when we want them to happen. And it's a funny saying that people have, I'm sure, been saying for decades, which I believe to be true. And it's if you want to make God laugh, tell Him your plans, because essentially your plans aren't necessarily what He wants. But moving at God's pace is truly having that peace that you're looking for, and not only what He wants, but also in His timing. So that's what we're really talking about when we say that, moving at His pace, moving at His pace. Sorry. It's interesting story for those Bible readers when you look at Jacob and basically how Jacob, they say, wrestled with God's angels and came out with a limp in doing so. Jacob was a man who wanted what he wanted, and he pleaded and he, begged God for what that was. So some believe that they were manifested, the things that he wanted in the flesh, and others believe that it was more of a spiritual motivation with regard to what Jacob was wrestling for. But nonetheless, there was definitely some conflict there with regard to God's timing and Jacob's timing. But what we do know is that Jacob was faithful to God and dedicated in talking to God. And I think there's evidence to show that sometimes God will be very flexible with us, His children. Of course, if it's not to harm someone else or to bring any hurt to someone else, God will definitely want to please His children. That definitely is His goal. But there's obviously an ultimate goal in mind, and that is for His perfect will to be done. That is for Him to be glorified in all things, and that's in all things that we do. But the beauty of it is that we are His children, and He does want to please us. So there is nothing wrong with pleading with God with regard to His timing, or with regard to what we want in that timing. But we have to be cognizant and knowing that there is a perfect will that God has, and there is a permissive will, which you may have heard some people talk about. And when I first heard that, it really baffled me. Like, if God has a perfect will, why would He have a permissive will? Why would there be any other will? And that's because He has given us self-will. He loved us so much. He says, hey, I'm going to allow you to do certain things, even if I know it's not best. Because sometimes us doing certain things that's not best, we get the greatest lessons. And so He allows that, just like, I allow that sometimes, with my children. They may make a decision. I won't let them harm themselves with so much, but they may make a decision that I don't believe is the best decision, that I have pretty good confidence that they're going to be disappointed. However, sometimes it is a bigger lesson learned if we allow our children to make certain mistakes. And I believe that is how God is with His children. He will allow us to make certain decisions that aren't the best, so that ultimately things can work out for us because we love Him through our lessons. Obviously, the optimal way to go is to humble ourselves to God's will, including His time, including His pace, because that way we will always benefit quicker and better in the short term and in the long term. So, of course, that's what I'm sharing to you today, what I'm meditating on today, and that is aiming to move peacefully in God's